Hello everyone, welcome to PaintingCrafty, and today I have another whimsical style character. If you follow me, you know I love to do little animals with clothes on it, and this little chickadee looks so sweet with his fall vest and his fun little hat. I love how he looks. I'm going to be showing you all the watercolor steps of how I can create those easy watercolor blends by just simply tapping in the colors and letting them work across the watercolor paper, and I like to call it create a little watercolor magic. For those of you who'd like to paint along with me, but drawing's not your thing, I do have a sketchbook membership, and that's where I have all the line drawings for any of the paintings I do on my channel. It's very easy to join and very reasonably priced, and I so appreciate all those who have joined and support my channel that way. Thank you for doing so. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to show you how you can create this little whimsical style chickadee, whether it be a card or something you put it into a frame, or even if you just create it just for yourself and you have it inside of your journal, you're sure to like this way the style of painting works. It's a fun way to paint these fall colors. For this particular painting, I was going to be doing the ink work first and then applying the watercolor on top. Anytime you use a pen with watercolor, you just need to make sure that the ink will be permanent. And Micron's pens are a permanent ink. They just need to be dry before you add any of the watercolor on top. Once I had all of the ink work done, I needed to pick up my pencil marks, and I used a kneaded eraser to do this. Kneaded erasers work great for this step because they won't smear any of the graphite across your paper. It'll just pick the pencil marks up and make them a lot lighter. To make it easier for you to find some of the items that I'm using today on my painting, I'll have links down inside of the description box. They're an Amazon link. I do receive a small commission if you do purchase them, but I just mostly do it so it's easy for you to go ahead and shop for these items if you would like to use them as well. For this particular painting, I'm going to be using my Paul Rubens watercolor set, but I always say, just buy the watercolor paint that you can afford because watercolor comes in a whole host of prices. So spend a tiny bit more money for your watercolor paper because that's really going to make the difference, and just buy the paint that you can afford. I'm going to start the watercolor process on my little chickadee, and I'm mixing the colors burnt brown and a little bit of coal black. Again, you always want to start light and bright and then work your way dark. With watercolor, you're always painting the shadows. And you want to start light and then go darker. If you go too dark, too quick, your colors will look just more chalky and you won't get that beautiful translucent look that you get when you're using watercolor. I'm mixing my colors to about tea consistency. The darkest you want to go on this level, on this layer, is coffee. So start with a real thin paint, mix your colors, maybe a little bit of black, a little bit of brown, and then tap in those colors where you want them. I have a little bit of wet area underneath on his body, which is going to work to my advantage. It's going to draw some of that darker color down into that body area without being too strong. Watercolor has the unique property that wherever your paper is wet, that's where your color wants to flow. So a little bit of that dark color is kind of blending down into his body. So I take my brush and I rinse it off into my clean water, give my brush a little bit of a squeeze, and then add a little bit more water into that area and allow that color to kind of just blend down and create that soft look of being white without being a strong paper of the paper white. Your brightest, whitest lights will be the white of your paper. But if you want to make something look more white, you actually have to paint just a little bit of color in there. So water your colors down to very much ink consistency or even lighter, just a hint of color, and add your colors that way. The next area I'm going to be working on is that banner area across the front of my bird. I chose to take a little bit of the color Payne's Gray and some of my burnt brown and mix it together. I'm going to be adding the darkest shadows onto either side of my banner, a little bit at the top and some at the bottom, leaving kind of a highlight in the middle. And again, it's the same process of adding my lightest color first and then adding the darker layers as I go. Take your time and build this area up, not going too dark too quick so you get those translucent layers of watercolor. After I finish that top banner, I'm going to move down and do that bottom one as well. I'm not going to get this process done in one step. I'm going to be layering my colors as I go. Watercolor is always going to dry lighter, so what you're seeing now isn't what it's going to look like when it's dry. So you need to give your paint not only a little bit of time to blend and mix, you also need to give it a little time to dry so you can see how dark your colors really are. To create the fall color look for my leaves, I'm going to be tapping in the colors of the oranges, the reds, and a little bit of the golden color. This is one of those areas, they're kind of small, this is just a little card, so I'm going to be tapping in my color and perhaps lifting some color too. So I can just rinse out my brush, give it a squeeze, and then lift some of the color, and then see how it dries. I end up messing with these leaves probably a little bit more than what I really should, but I really do love seeing the process of the colors mixing and blending. So I just tap a little bit of color in, lift a little bit of color with some clear water, and then see how they dry. The banner has had a little bit of time to dry, so I go back up and I add another layer. Now I probably came in a little too soon on those banners because my color from my leaves do float right back up into the side of that banner, but I'm okay with that. I can just use that clean brush technique where I wash my brush off, tap it into the clean water, and then give it a squeeze and blend that color out. I'm fine with having some of those oranges and rusts inside of my banner. I wanted to give my chickadee plenty of time to dry before I added any more color next to his body or on his little vest, so I decided to go ahead and do the outside leaves. I wanted to create more of an earthy shade of green, so I have some of the color called hooker's green, and I mix a little bit of red into it, or a rusty red. Because those are complements, the green and the rust, the red colors, it's going to create kind of a brownish green, a real earthy feel, and I love that shade of green for adding a little bit of fall touch to these green leaves. To paint my berries, I'm mixing my color to about milk consistency. I want it a little thicker so I have a little bit more control of keeping that water or that color exactly where I want it. If it's really thin, I might have it bleeding and going past the little round circles. And since I've already done my pen work, I kind of want to keep it inside of that circle area if I can. It's okay if it goes out a little bit because in the end I do kind of soften those little blended areas on the berries and bring that little color floats out into the background. So that's fine, but I want to keep it a little thicker to be able to have a little bit more control to keep my paint right where I want it. You can still create a little bit of depth inside of those berries if you rinse your brush out into the clean water, give it a squeeze, and you can lift some of the color to create a highlight on your berries. So you don't have to feel like it's just one solid ball of color. You can add dark and light as well. For the leaves that were in the center, I basically used the same colors I had used already for my leaves and my berries and just mix them on my palette and then just pop in the colors, a wet on wet style. So my color is wet, I add more color, wet color on the top, and let the colors mix and do that little blending on its own. It's fun to watch the colors mix and blend and see how they dry and how the colors look. It's a fun technique to do, and it's a great way to create these little watercolor blends and make these fall colors come to life. As your painting is starting to dry, you really do need to check the value of your colors. Do you have enough darks? Do you have enough lights? A good way you can do this is to snap a picture of your painting and make it in a black and white form. And if you can see the darks and the lights and the mediums, then you know you've got a good value range inside of your painting. But if everything looks really flat in black and white, you need to boost up the value in your colors. So that's just a little trick you can use to see if you have enough contrast in your paintings. To create an interesting pattern on top of his clothes, I decided to use the colors the green and the brown that I had already used on my painting. I love that color of that earthy green and a little hint of that brown to create that interesting pattern. I was going to be doing it like a checkered pattern inside of his vest, and I'm creating that same look on top of his hat. Again, I'm just using my small brush and I'm tapping the colors where I want them. I needed to make sure I left a little bit of a highlight on that brim of his hat to make it look like it was catching light. And the part of the hat that kind of swoops around his face, that's going to be in a shadow. So that needs to be a darker color. Now, if you paint this and you lose the whites and you need to bring them back, you can always use either a uni ball pen or a white jelly roll pen in white to add those little bits of bright white back in. Also, you could also use a little bit of white gouache. If you have that in your art stash, that works as well too. I wanted to make sure my bird had very much a chickadee feel, so I needed to make sure his beak had kind of a rich dark quality to it, as well as that black part that goes around his eye needs to have a dark feel, and underneath his beak he's got just this little black patch of color as well. His feathers that come back for the ones that are on the top, those are going to have a mix of the dark brown and the black. But again, I'm trying not to go too dark too quick, and it's okay to have little bright pops of white from your paper underneath there. And if you need to add just the tiniest bit of highlight on his nose or around his eye, which it always looks nice to have a little white area around a bird's eye, you can always add those in with your pen at the end. To paint his bow, I used a little bit of the Payne's Gray and some of the burnt brown with a lot of water just to make a simple little color wash for his bow. I wanted to mention, if you would like to share your work, if you create this little character, that you can always tag me on Instagram at PaintingCrafty. I love to see your work. I love to share people's work. It doesn't have to look like mine to be good, and it's always so interesting to see everyone's creative ideas when they do this work. Even though we might be creating the same painting, if you trace it, you probably might have different ideas of the color choices you would like to do, or perhaps you paint yours or draw it slightly different. It's always fun to see what everyone creates. Now that my painting had completely dried, I wanted to work a little bit on the background. I wanted a very subtle look, so I took some of the brown and the black, mixed it to about coffee consistency, took a big brush, loaded it full of that color combination, and then just gave my brush a tap. And I'm creating a little speckled background. My paper is completely dry in the back, so these little speckle marks will be just more exact, more round, and they won't soften at all. If my paper was wet behind there, those marks would be more faded and softened, but I wanted more exact dots, so I did it while my paper was dry. Here I'm using a brush that just has plain water in it, and I'm going to the edges of my leaves or anywhere my color kind of traveled a little too far past my line work. I'm just taking that and then blending that color to the background. I wanted my background to be very subtle, so I'm just coming in with some clear water and spreading my color around a little bit from my banners to the leaves and to the subtle background. If you don't have enough color and you want to create this look, you can always pick a little bit up on your palette and then just water it down with a lot of water and create that very subtle wash in your background. Once my piece had completely dried, I used my jelly roll pen in the color white and added just a bright white on his little eye and added a highlight to the top of his beak. And here he is sitting among some of the other fall things I have created so far on my channel this year. If you would like to check out my sketchbook membership and paint this little guy yourself, make sure you click the link inside of the description box for my Ko-fi shop. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. It really can help my channel grow. If you enjoyed this tutorial, here's a couple more you might want to check out. Well, thanks for joining me, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.